Alright guys, we're really getting close to the finish here. It's been a heck of a ride for the tournament, but let's go ahead and jump into the third match of the third round, Drizzt Do'Urden versus Gavin Guile. Now this is one of those matchups where the characters are very different in their core. Drizzt is someone who's coming from the bottom up, and Gavin is kind of going the opposite of what's typical for fantasy. He's falling from his pinnacle throughout the series. Then that makes the juxtaposition between the two really stand out. So let's go ahead and jump into this one. We have 7 categories: origin, development, role, interest for the reader, relationships, who would win in a fight, and the tiebreaker that only matters if it's a tie, and it might not be, it might be, who knows. Let's just get right into it. So with the first category, origin. Drizzt, or Drizzt if you want to say it right, as I've gone over before, started off in the underworld, and after being rejected by society, has come back to the surface to try and make a new name for himself, a new reputation, find a new life among people who don't really accept his kind, which is a very good origin and is executed extremely well, especially his initial meeting of his companions. I really enjoy going along this journey with Drizzt at the very beginning of the series. Gavin, on the other hand's origin of being not Gavin, his brother Dazen, who killed the actual Gavin, assumed his mantle, and has been living as a false god among these people for so many years, is definitely original and executed very well. But I think Drizzt's execution of his less original origin is done better than Gavin Guile's more original origin. Drizzt is truly epic and one of the characters that stands out in the fantasy genre as one of the greats. Gavin is really, really good, and this origin is wonderful. And I have a very hard time comparing these two, and with these two both stacking up so evenly in origin, especially with how their origin affects and builds their character for the rest of the series, for the first time that I can think of, I'm calling the first point a wash. Next up, we have development. Now, these two both develop in their role. Drizzt, over time, goes from being an outcast to society to a hero people know of and look forward to meeting. Gavin's role is absolutely torn apart as he falls from his mantle and becomes more and more of a broken man. That being said, his personality doesn't change a whole lot. Meanwhile, Drizzt's development of character is extraordinary, and this is something that I think he has a massive leg up on Gavin with. Over the course of the series, events have affected Drizzt in huge ways. The deaths of people close to him have really shaped and warped this character in positive and negative ways, and I think there's just a different level between developments here, and I'm going to go ahead and give this point to Drizzt/Drizzt. I hate that I'm not saying Drizzt, but I'll say it right for you guys. It's Drizzt. Now we have role they play in the world they are in. Drizzt's role is fantastic. He's a ranger/hero that has saved the world and changed the outcomes of wars and battles across the Forgotten Realms. Gavin, on the other hand, is the god of his world and actually shapes pretty much every power dynamic that exists within Lightbringer. I think overall I am leaning much more towards Gavin here, because while both of the executions are on par with each other, I think Gavin/Dazen's overall role is monumentally more important to Drizzt's on the day-to-day basis of the series, especially with how every character interacts with him. Seeing this kind of embodiment of a god portrayed so humanly is wonderful, and role really lends a lot to the overall character of Gavin, so I'm going to go ahead and give him the role point. Now we have interest for the reader. Not only does Drizzt stand out in his own books, but throughout the entire Forgotten Realms mythos, he stands out as arguably the largest fan favorite character. He is huge within a massive world and someone who has left his mark on fantasy, and that is almost entirely due to his overall interest for the reader. He's very different in execution of personality than we really get from a lot of other fantasy rangers, and I think he's going to have a lot of influence as the genre progresses over the years, more subtly than probably most, but it'll be there. Gavin's interest, on the other hand, starts really strong in Lightbringer, but slowly shifts more and more to other characters, to the point where he's not really having the spotlight much on him anymore. His only real arc he's going through anymore is one of torture and pain, and I have to say, for overall interest, besides the wonderful mystery and unveiling of the situation with his brother, his interest is really dying within the series, which I believe is done deliberately to shift the spotlight onto Kip, but I have to say, this does hurt him in this point. Well, in the first book, Gavin had a magnetic interest to him. It's slowly being pulled away deliberately, but for that reason, Drizzt's going to go ahead and quite easily earn this point. He's just so wonderful in terms of how he's executed, his personality, and the way he interacts with people. It's next level. So I'm going to go ahead and confidently give it to Drizzt. And now we have relationships. I've said it before and I will say it again. The relationships Drizzt has within his series are nearly perfect. I love everyone from Regis to Canterbury, Wolfgar and beyond. I think everyone helps develop him. He really pulls a lot of his personality from his friendships. Really, Drizzt sets the bar for what many fantasy authors should shoot for when it comes to developing good character dynamics and building a character through relationships. It's a large part of his character, and I think that's a very positive thing. Gavin/Dazen, on the other hand, his strongest relationship really is with himself and his own ego, and it becomes a large part of his arc to really tear it down and destroy it. Well, this is interesting. He doesn't have great relationships with many other people, except for Andros, who's just such an extraordinarily executed character that every relationship with him feels awesome. And even his love interest, the relationship there suffers for sure in terms of interest and execution. So I do think Gavin has well above average relationships as a whole, especially the internal one. It just doesn't even begin to compare to Drizzt's or the relationships Drizzt has building him as a character and the world around him, really. So this point quite easily goes to our Dark Elf. Now we have who would win in a fight. Drizzt/Drizzt, I'm gonna do a lot of slashes this video, is without a doubt the best sword fighter in the Forgotten Realms. He is arguably the best sword fighter in fantasy that is not just ridiculously overpowered or have some kind of magical thing enhancing them, and his Dark Elf lineage really gives him a leg up in almost every kind of standard combat. Gavin Guile does not do standard combat. He is an explosive with a whole lot of other tools in his belt as well, plus he is physically well beyond what any normal human should be able to do. This guy can build an entire wall to defend a city in a small amount of time. He can take down hundreds, if not thousands, on his own, and his ability to sway battles has been shown throughout the series. Yes, he can be surprised and arrogant for sure, which has cost him in Lightbringer many times. That being said, though, he's killed gods, and I don't think Drizzt stands much of a chance against him. I'm going to go ahead and say that Gavin quite handily would be able to take down Drizzt in a fight. Even if Drizzt's Black Panther came into the fight, it would really just mildly hamper Gavin going forward. This guy's ability with magic is so diverse, and he's able to utilize it in so many different interesting ways. It would be foolish for me to say he doesn't earn this one. And now we have the tiebreaker, who would do better in the other's world. Going into Lightbringer, there is a whole lot of political power struggles going on, and Drizzt would have zero knowledge of them if he was suddenly dropped into their world. That being said, there's such common magic usage in the Lightbringer world, and it's so far beyond the standard mage within the Forgotten Realms. I think Drizzt would be outclassed when it comes to fighting in general. Yes, anyone who's not a magic user, he would be leagues above, but anyone who could draft 3 or 4 more different kinds of Luxons, especially the more powerful ones, it would be really tough for Drizzt to top them. I am so struggling with Drizzt in this video. He would certainly get caught up in one of these conflicts, and I don't think he would be able to hold his own. Well, his plot armor is thick, don't get me wrong. There are just certain beings in the Lightbringer world that are able to cast so much output, even disregarding the one that doesn't have to listen to those limitations. I'm gonna go ahead and say he could be pretty easily overpowered and overwhelmed. Gavin Guile in Forgotten Realms, on the other hand, would be so powerful compared to the average magic user. He'd be able to have such an immediate, direct form of magic, while Forgotten Realms is in a much more traditional fantasy magic and would be much slower than what Gavin can do. That plus his enhanced physical abilities, which are a rare combination in the Forgotten Realms series. I'm gonna go ahead and say that Gavin would do very well for himself. He'd probably get too cocky frequently, ended up getting in trouble, but he's able to get out of it very often. I'm gonna go ahead and say that Gavin/Dazen Guile at his peak would do better in the Forgotten Realms world than Drizzt would do in Lightbringer. I'm so sorry for the back and forth on Drizzt and Drizzt. I kept trying to say Drizzt, but Drizzt kept coming out because it's ingrained for me since I was like 11. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I had a lot of fun recording it. I do think that Gavin is a absolutely wonderful character, but Drizzt really is one of the pinnacles of modern fantasy when it comes to character. He is absolutely a joy to follow, and yes, the Forgotten Realms is intimidating to get into, but you can absolutely just pick up a few of these standalone Drizzt trilogies or things like that that are in the Forgotten Realms and not be lost at all. And I highly recommend you do if you have not already, and pick up Lightbringer if you've not already, because it's a great series. Like and subscribe if you've not already, guys. Hit the Patreon if you want to support the channel, and have a good one, y'all. Peace.